Patients often have questions about safety. What are the risks of clinical trial participation?
Yeah, so before anybody enrolls onto a clinical trial, you should sit with your doctor to talk about the pros and cons of entering this clinical trial. And one of the things that they will talk to you about is what the expected safety of this drug is. So you might ask yourself, well, if it's a phase 1 study, first in human study, how do they know what toxicity to expect?
Right.
The answer is that there's a lot of pre-human studies that occur both in mice and monkeys and other animals, and researchers often have a good idea of what to expect in human, but there is a lot of unknowns in a phase 1 clinical trial. And after discussing with your doctor the pros and cons of going on a clinical trial and what side effect profile to expect from whatever drug or combination that you are about to be using, usually you go through a consent. So you will get a packet, usually it's about 10 to 20 pages long, written in a way that, that patients can understand. And it'll have a list of toxicities that are associated with the research that is occurring. And so in terms of knowing what adverse events might happen, the consent is key because it'll have those all listed out, and also having the conversation with your physician about either what they've experienced giving this clinical trial or what is to be expected after this drug had been introduced pre-humans.
Mm-hmm. Are there protocols in place to protect patients?
Yeah, so remember how we talked about in the phase 1 trials, we dose escalate the drug until we reach some toxicity limit. And so there are specific rules written out in a protocol that the doctor must follow that ensures safety for the patients that enroll on clinical trials. And that dose escalation part where we reach a toxic limit is a key part of those phase 1 trials and is spelled out before you even enroll. Usually there's also something called the Data Safety Monitoring Committee, as well as other committees that are looking at patients as they are receiving these drugs and move forward on clinical trials to make sure that the investigators are following the protocol as written, that if anything happens, they document why it happened and fix the problem before it becomes another problem for a patient. So there are very specific safety rules and a lot of redundancy to protect our patients, because the number one priority is to protect the patient.
Yeah. I think you've already answered this, Dr. Kittai, but how do you know the medicine is safe before a human trial even begins?
The answer is you don't. So there is some risk. As I said, they do test it in animals before they give the drug to humans, and they usually start at the lowest dose possible. But there are certain circumstances where there are surprising side effects that are not expected. And so when you're entering a first-in-human phase 1 trial, that is a specific risk that you do need to discuss with your physician about before enrolling.
Can a patient change their mind once they've enrolled in a clinical trial? Okay.
Always. They can come off the clinical trial at any point if they choose to.